Have you ever considered how the fundamental frameworks that organize our societies might, at times, inadvertently contribute to inequality rather than solely ensuring order? Yes, social institutions can absolutely perpetuate systemic injustice. This occurs when the established rules, practices, and underlying norms within these institutions, whether by design or through unintended consequences, consistently create and reinforce disadvantages for certain groups of people, even if individual actors within those institutions do not harbor overt prejudice. The perpetuation of injustice by social institutions arises from several deeply intertwined factors. A primary cause is historical legacies, where past discriminatory laws or policies have shaped current institutional frameworks. Even if explicit discrimination is removed, the accumulated disadvantages in areas like wealth, education, or healthcare access can persist across generations. Furthermore, implicit biases held by individuals operating within these institutions can subtly influence decision-making, leading to unequal outcomes in areas like employment, legal judgments, or access to resources. These biases are often unconscious but contribute to systemic patterns. Institutional cultures, often reinforced by tradition and informal norms, can also normalize practices that disadvantage specific groups, for example, through unexamined criteria that favor one demographic over another. Finally, the very structure of some institutions may not adequately account for the diverse needs and experiences of all members of society, thereby inadvertently creating barriers that are systemic rather than individually targeted. To analyze this, one might look at a concept known as institutional racism or institutional sexism, which are frameworks for understanding how race or gender-based inequalities are embedded in the fabric and functioning of society's institutions. A key distinction here is between individual prejudice and systemic discrimination. While individual prejudice is about personal attitudes, systemic discrimination refers to the practices and policies within institutions that disadvantage groups. For example, a justice system that disproportionately applies harsher sentences for similar crimes based on demographic factors exhibits systemic injustice, regardless of the individual prejudices of any single judge or prosecutor. Similarly, an education system that provides fewer resources to schools in certain neighborhoods can perpetuate cycles of disadvantage, regardless of the dedication of individual teachers. Understanding these mechanisms involves critically examining the formal rules and informal practices of an institution. A useful theoretical lens here is that of a critical race theorist or a feminist philosopher who would highlight how power structures are often invisible to those they benefit. They emphasize that justice is not merely about treating everyone the same, but about recognizing historical and ongoing power imbalances and working to dismantle them within institutional contexts. Another important concept is that of intersectionality, which reminds us that individuals hold multiple social identities, and the injustice they experience is often shaped by the overlap of these identities within institutional structures. Ultimately, recognizing how social institutions can perpetuate systemic injustice allows us to move beyond simply addressing individual acts of prejudice. It encourages a deeper, more structural examination of society, prompting us to critically evaluate and reform the very systems designed to govern our lives, striving to make them genuinely equitable and just for all.